Just imagine, about 18% of the Australian continent's officially considered desert, and nearly 35% of the country gets less than 10 inches of rainfall a year, and is basically in desert or semi-desert conditions. As a result, huge areas face massive challenges when it comes to growing crops that are useful for the country. You have to spend a lot of money to make the soil fertile and keep the plants healthy. Still, Australia is among the countries that grow the most wheat in the world. For example, in the 2023-2024 season, they harvested 28 million tons of this crop. And yes, that much wheat was grown in less than favorable conditions. But that's not the most surprising part. What's even more shocking is that Australians just dump tons of harvested crops right onto their dry, desert-like, barren land. Why? That's exactly what we're going to figure out today. Bale. Another bale. Lots of bales. That's what's left after the wheat in the fields has been harvested. According to estimates, for every 2 pounds of grain collected, there are about 2 pounds of dry stalks, straw, left over after threshing. This means that in the 2023-2024 season alone, around 28 million tons of straw were produced in Australia. Yes, straw is used as livestock feed, but that's clearly not enough to meet all the needs of a continent when it comes to waste disposal. Another option is to send the straw to special processing sites. But that means pretty big extra costs that, under certain conditions, could make wheat farming as a whole a pointless business. So we're left with only the simplest options for getting rid of straw. For example, do nothing. Yes, that's an option too. Just leaving piles of straw somewhere out in the field. And that's a huge problem. Hay bales are often stored right out in the open, where they're at risk of spontaneously catching fire. In dry, windy weather, a single smoldering bale can spark a massive blaze, threatening not only farm infrastructure, but also people's lives. This is basically yet another disaster source for Australia, a country that already constantly suffers from wildfires. Of course, very often it's almost impossible to figure out the cause of a fire. However, no one doubts that farmland can turn into a source of local-scale disasters. Besides, there are confirmed examples. So, for example, in 2024, the Bayandine fire broke out, burning more than 48,000 acres. Homes and farm buildings were destroyed, and a large number of livestock were killed. According to witnesses, the blaze started exactly on farmland. Another example, the Pulatop fire that broke out in 2006. Back then, a spark from a tractor in a plowed field set off a blaze that wiped out about 22,000 acres, more than 2,500 sheep, farm buildings, and equipment. And let's not even get into the fact that probably some of the largest fires in the country's history could also have started from hay catching fire in farm fields. Besides, a common way to get rid of straw is just to burn it. Of course, this kind of disposal can lead to a fire. Straw burns, gets carried away by the wind, and then thousands of acres of land end up burning. But even if this method doesn't cause a major fire, it's still a source of problems. For every ton of straw burned, about 3,000 pounds of carbon dioxide, 128 pounds of carbon monoxide, 24 pounds of particulate matter, and other toxic compounds like nitrogen and sulfur oxides are released. During active burning periods, farmers report smoke spreading over large areas, affecting visibility on the roads, which creates a risk of accidents and worsens air quality. Residents complain about respiratory problems, eye irritation, and allergic reactions from breathing in smoke that contains particulates, carbon monoxide, and other pollutants. Although Australia has stricter rules compared to some countries where mass burning causes toxic clouds like Egypt or India, local episodes of air pollution are still an issue. Besides air pollution, having too much straw left in the fields can make it harder to control pests and diseases. The leftovers can provide shelter for various insect pests and pathogens that help spread plant diseases, which means more pesticides need to be used. In general, the problem is real, and resourceful Aussies have found a way to reduce the waste from wheat farming. What's really important is that at the same time, they managed to improve a huge issue Australia faces: soil infertility. Early in the last decade, the results of a lengthy and multifaceted study were put together, examining what effects straw causes in the soil of certain barren and arid parts of South Australia. And the results proved that straw can indeed be tossed into problematic soil. First off, in the arid areas Australia's famous for, the soil stays dry most of the time, leading to the formation of a sort of crust called hydrophobic. Simply put, the soil develops a shield that pushes water away. There comes a moment when the long-awaited rains arrive, but instead of soaking deep and nourishing the thirsty soil where nothing can grow, the water runs off in unknown directions because of the crust. As a result, the soil stays dry. That's when researchers added straw to the dry soil under conditions of low rainfall. They covered the patch with a layer of wheat waste, or in other words, mulched it. And that's when the positive effect started. Look, untreated straw, when soaked, can absorb and hold twice its own weight in liquid. Australians laid a layer of straw over a piece of land, and then a rare period of rain happened. The water, rather than draining away, got absorbed by the straw and stayed where it's meant to have a positive effect. And then the straw mulch started gradually giving back the moisture it had absorbed. Water still manages to get through the water repellent layer, which fades over time as humidity rises. As a result, the soil stops being so impenetrable to rainfall, and drought doesn't hit as hard when there's straw mulch. The water stays near the ground. Not all the time, but for significantly longer than without a straw blanket. The Australians don't give exact numbers about how much soil moisture increases. However, we do have China, which regularly carries out similar studies. In one of the dry regions of the country, one infertile plot was covered with a layer of straw while the other was left bare. Then they studied the moisture content and concluded that in the soil with the straw blanket, moisture levels increased by 0.7 to 22.5% at depths from 0 to 79 inches, depending on the conditions. At the same time, the water use efficiency of the soil rose by 24 to 33% under various mulching rates from 6,600 to 19,800 pounds per 2.4 acres compared to the control plot without straw. Sounds like the perfect solution for Australia with its soil and climate issues, right? But the benefits of straw waste don't stop there. Imagine this. It started raining, the kind of rain the infertile Australian soil had been waiting for so long. Let's say the water didn't just vanish because of the water repellent layer, but then another problem pops up: evaporation. Yeah, it just so happens that water tends to disappear into thin air when it's hot and the sun is blazing. And here's where straw comes to the rescue again. A layer of straw creates a physical barrier between the sun's rays and the soil surface, slowing down evaporation a lot. Besides that, mulch acts like insulation, reflecting the sun and keeping the soil cooler. And the cooler the ground, the less water evaporates. There's another interesting positive effect. At night, when the air temperature drops, straw mulch can cool down to the dew point, causing moisture from the air to condense on and inside the straw, then soak into the soil. Yes, thanks to this effect, the ground won't get a lot of moisture, but in Australia's dry areas, every drop of water counts. So you get the idea. Water for the soil is great. That means half the battle to boost the fertility of the dry, practically dead Australian land is already won. Why half? Because dead soil isn't just about lack of moisture, it's also about missing nutrients, without which crops either won't sprout or will do so in a way that normal yields are out of the question. Well, straw helps with that too. Researchers took 2 plots and planted wheat on both. One used straw mulch, the other had no additives. As a result, the average yield over several years on the plot with the straw cover was 8.7% higher than of the one where they added nothing. That percentage might look small, but keep in mind the soil wasn't fertile at all at first, so that result's quite impressive. But how can simple straw do all that? Straw is parts of a plant, which is a natural product, so straw itself is also a natural organic mix of different elements. As it breaks down, it releases everything it contains into the soil. Eventually, as straw decomposes, it enriches the soil with organic matter. Over time, this turns into humus, which is the foundation for healthy, fertile soil, improving its structure and ability to hold moisture. Besides that, straw boosts nutrient availability for plants. It contains key elements like nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, along with plenty of micronutrients such as calcium, magnesium, iron, and zinc. These elements are gradually released as the straw breaks down, becoming accessible to the plant's root system. Moreover, straw mulch boosts the activity of nitrogen-fixing microbes in the soil, which can convert atmospheric nitrogen into a form plants can absorb. Although at the early stage of straw decomposition, microbes might temporarily use the available nitrogen from the soil. In the long run, this helps enrich the land. Physical properties of the soil also benefit greatly from straw mulching. As straw breaks down, it helps form soil aggregates, which improves soil structure, increases its porosity, and fills it with air. This makes it easier for roots to grow as well as for water and air to move through the soil. The ground becomes less compact and looser, which in turn boosts its water permeability, allowing rainwater to soak deeper and run off less on the surface. You can't overestimate the importance of boosting the soil's biological activity. Straw is like a real dining room for loads of soil microbes and other critters like earthworms. Their active life speeds up organic breakdown, helps cycle nutrients, and creates a healthy, living soil ecosystem with rich biodiversity, which is crucial for carbon and nitrogen cycles. And don't forget about the weeds, which can sneak into the field even when the soil isn't that great. In that case, the yield drops too, because these pests push out the crops people actually need. As you've probably figured out by now, straw helps in this situation as well. We already said that a straw blanket blocks sunlight from reaching the soil. This is crucial when it comes to weeds because most of their seeds need light to sprout and grow, and without it, their growth slows down a lot or stops completely. This strategy brings many benefits. Cultivated plants no longer compete with weeds for water, nutrients, and light, which helps them grow healthier and stronger. For people, it means saving a lot of time and effort weeding, especially on large plots. Plus, mulching with straw helps cut down or even completely eliminate the use of chemical herbicides. Straw also creates a clean and dry barrier between the fruits and the damp soil. This greatly cuts down the risk of rot, mold, and other fungal diseases that often hit crops when they come in contact with wet ground. And in such cases, some soil pests and slugs that prefer moist conditions might be left without food. So, with the help of straw, you can make a contribution to solving two pressing problems in Australia at once: reducing waste and shrinking the area of infertile, nearly useless land for growing various crops. However, it's clear that 1, 2, or even 3 studies, even when backed by global practices, still won't lead to widespread use of straw in this role. There's still not enough studies. The material hasn't been tested across all possible regions, plus there haven't been any long-term trials specifically on Australian soil. However, there's another cool way to use wheat waste. What's left out in the fields can actually be turned into fuel for cars. Let's move over to Europe. There, a project called Butanext, funded by the European Commission, is showing how ordinary wheat straw can become the fuel of the future. Biobutanol, ready to run in engines with no modifications at all. The technology is based on the following process. First, the straw is shredded into fine chips and steamed with a bit of acid to break down its skeleton and unlock access to the sugars inside. Then, a special mix of enzymes is added to this straw mash to break down cellulose and hemicellulose into simple sugars, creating a sweet liquid. Next, bacteria from the Clostridium genus, trained to handle whatever the straw can give after this treatment, are introduced into the solution. These microbes then ferment the sugar-rich broth, turning it into a mix of acetone, ethanol, and butanol. At the pilot plant of the Renewable Energy Center in Spain, they're processing up to 15 pounds of straw per hour today, producing up to 26 gallons of fermented liquid. An impressive outcome for the first phase of this unusual project. Once fermentation is done, it's time for distillation and extraction, which let you isolate pure biobutanol. This fuel blends smoothly with regular petrol up to 16% and with diesel up to 40%, and the car drives just as smooth, with the engine running without any extra adjustments. Plus, economic estimates and early trials showed that at a big enough scale, making biobutanol from straw might actually compete on price with traditional fossil fuels. Besides wheat straw, scientists are also looking into other waste, like the organic fraction of urban trash. Mixing it with straw improves the properties of the resulting liquid, which they say makes the whole process even more flexible for different conditions and regions. One of the main goals for researchers was to create fuel that pollutes the atmosphere less, and as it's claimed, they succeeded. One chemical engineer said that compared not only to other types of regular fuel but also to various biofuels, biobutanol is much heavier, which makes it less volatile. What does this mean? Biobutanol reduces gas emissions and causes much less volatility at gas stations and industrial plants. Ultimately, the Butanext project is not only a step toward clean fuel, but also an example of a new economy. Will this solution make it to Australia? Probably, but again, only after enough research has been done. Plus, scientists definitely need to confirm all the benefits found in the early stages, and then someone has to figure out how to scale it up efficiently. If it all works out, the continent will get yet another way to cut down on the number of straw piles in the fields. Another way to use straw is in construction. Yes, straw can be one of the elements that make housing better. And all this is totally in line with modern trends, with the help of a 3D printer. This project kicked off in 2022 in Buffalo, New York, USA. A small research team had one goal: to figure out how to 3D print insulation made from wheat straw. And this wasn't just some small local initiative. It was backed financially by the U.S. Department of Energy's Advanced Research Projects Agency, Energy. Perhaps it was that government funding that helped the researchers make it happen. They processed the straw into fibers, which were then stitched together through hydrogen bonds. In the end, in a way surprising to many, but totally ordinary for scientists, the straw fibers turned into 3D printing ink that can be used in thermal insulation structures. Think this isn't a very useful idea? Straw for insulation? Sounds at least odd, if not downright ineffective, but in reality, that's far from the truth. Thanks to its structure, straw has excellent insulating properties. On top of that, it can handle pressure pretty well and is more fire-resistant than other organic materials. Sounds good. But there are challenges too. One of the hurdles to turning agricultural waste into large insulation panels is that standard 3D printing methods are really slow and only handle small volumes. A regular printer uses a round nozzle and prints one line at a time. However, the team managed to upgrade the printer by installing a slot die nozzle, which ensures more even and faster distribution of material over a large area. They also used several nozzles at the same time and developed a special system that supplies material evenly to all nozzles, which helps maintain consistent quality. Is scaling up around the corner? Maybe. For now, the team is hoping to team up with an unnamed industrial partner, and even that's no guarantee the solution will make it to market. But along with the Australians, we're hoping straw recycling technologies will gain more traction because it's truly important for Australia.